Or shot fire, officer down, shot fire, officer down. Got a city officer down, shot fire.
223, be advised, we have a visual on enemy paratroopers in grid Papa uniforms.
Welcome to the Resilient Warrior Nation, a podcast dedicated to inspiring hope and healing for first responders, military veterans, and anyone facing PTSD and trauma. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Resilient Warrior Nation podcast. I'm your host, Mike Morgan, and I am pumped for today's show. I have a very special guest. His name is Eric Castor. He is a former Air Force PJ or Pararescueman. I don't know why, but PJs are not as easily found on many podcasts on YouTube. They do incredible work. They are tier 1 warriors. You guys will hear all about it upcoming. And I can't wait to get to Eric's. And I hope I have many more PJs because the work they do is just unbelievable. Before I officially introduce him, let me just give you Eric's bio, which is quite impressive. Eric grew up in New Hampshire. He was a 2-time state wrestling champion in New Hampshire with 3 in all of New England. In 1993, Eric left for the U.S. Air Force to become a PJ at age 19. Eric graduated PJ school 2 years later and was stationed at Patrick Air Force Base for 2 years. Eric was deployed to both Northern and Southern Watch, and in June 1996, Eric was a survivor of the Khartoum Towers bombing in Khobar, Saudi Arabia, wherein 19 Americans died and over 400 people were injured by a bomb that had the explosive power of over 23,000 pounds of TNT. He was one of the closest people to the bomb and walked away. He also received a Purple Heart for that incident. Eric then served 6 more years as a PJ, deploying 6 more times. The last 3 years, he was assigned to the National Guard and went to Ground Zero and helped recovery efforts for 5 days. Eric got into dental school in 2002 and graduated in 2006, wherein he worked in a mental hospital as a dentist for 6 months, then started his private practice in 2006. Eric got married in 2000 and had 3 kids, but was later divorced after 20 years. Eric then lost himself with drinking and dealing with life stresses. In 2020, during his divorce, he was alone during COVID, running approximately 50 to 60 miles a week and drinking all night, trying to get away from his own thoughts. Eric ran an ultramarathon and then found ayahuasca, the plant-based medicine that I advocate so highly for, 2 weeks later by accident when he was asked by a friend to bring another friend who was not hiding his pains as well as Eric was. And incredibly, ayahuasca changed his life. Eric brought his now wife to the ayahuasca center a month later and actually married her last month after an ayahuasca ceremony. Eric is now journeying with ayahuasca 64 times to date and is planning a 30-day jungle dieta with the Yawanawa tribe in February to continue his path of healing and spirituality. And Eric is the co-founder of the new Inekawa Foundation and Wounded Guardians Project, also to fund veterans to come to the medicine. Eric, that is one impressive resume, and I'm so pumped to have you here and welcome you to the Resilient Warrior Nation podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, it is my honor. And for those of you who don't know, which is pretty much going to be everyone but me and Eric, my life changed also with ayahuasca, wherein I journeyed this past March at a facility that was called Soul Quest Ayahuasca in Orlando, Florida, which Eric, that's where your first journey occurred as well, correct?
Yes. Yep.
And many subsequent. And Eric had volunteered at the facility, and I had met another man named Brad at the facility. Eric and Brad have now co-founded Inekawa. Am I pronouncing that correctly, Eric?
Yep. It's Inekawa. It's I awaken. It's an I and awaken backwards. That's
okay.
Yep.
Ah, nice. I like that. Creative. So Eric is the co-founder, and as such, this gentleman is going to be saving and changing lives. I will forever be a proponent of this medicine. It changed my life. I felt like I was reborn after using it, after suffering from PTSD myself. And in addition to talking about Eric, about his entire military career, we are going to dive deeply into his experiences with the medicine, because a lot of you get in touch with me through my Instagram and really want to know more about it. It's something that's becoming a little more mainstream now, but for the most part, it's still one of those life's mysteries to a lot of people. So we want to awaken as many people to this medicine as we can. And as far as I'm concerned, the revolution is coming because this medicine is so profound, cathartic, and is literally a miracle on God's green earth.
It's magic.
So, Eric, yes, again, welcome. And, excuse me. First, I had someone tell me that they love when shows do an EDC dump. So as a dentist right now, I'm not sure how much you're carrying every day in your pockets as far as a weaponry, but do you walk around on the daily with anything special you'd like to tell everyone about?
Well, matter of fact, it just stopped about 2 years ago. Like, I was
Did
a
you?
constant carry guy, and I rarely bring my gun out with me anymore. It was kind of that I don't know, hypervigilance went away. You know, sometimes
Okay.
I think maybe I should have a little more of it now, but
Yeah.
but not anymore. I have a revolver that goes around with me on road trips now.
Okay. And a knife or anything like that? Everyone's always curious to see what the pros carrying around, if you're carrying around a knife.
Nope. I'm pretty believing the universe is good these days. I'm hoping.
All right. So you're just sporting that toothbrush and toothpaste at all times as you walk around.
Yeah.
All right. So, all right, let's just kind of get the audience to know you a little bit. So you grew up in New Hampshire. Kind of tell us about your childhood.
I had a great childhood. You know, I found out that a lot of people didn't, but mine was the perfect childhood in a small town in New Hampshire, Keene, New Hampshire. And I grew up with great parents. Life was good. It was we were lower middle class. Grew up in subsidized housing partially, and then my parents bought a house when I was maybe in 5th grade, and little house, and that's where I grew up, in this quiet little neighborhood, a paper boy of the neighborhood, and
Nice, me too.
Shop. Yep. I wish kids could still do that, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
But and then
Did you do the collect? Knock on the door and collect the money
yeah,
every Friday night or whatever?
Yep.
Yep.
I had to go down on Saturday morning and carry the papers in the snow to get
Yeah.
them up to put them in every spot the person wanted. It wasn't just throwing them in the driveway. It was like, put this one behind my screen door, put this one in my mailbox, put this one over here in the carport. It was,
Yeah.
people are interesting.
We should be able to charge more for custom orders, brother.
Yeah. So then I was more into sports than anything. You know, I was wrestled since I was in 2nd grade. My dad was a state champion wrestler, so I always looked
nice.
up to him. And we were the first father-son state champions in New Hampshire. And I won my sophomore year and got 3rd my junior year, and then came back and won again my senior year. But
Nice.
but I wasn't planning on ever going to college. I had a 2.0 in high school. 2.0 was the exact grade I needed to do sports. So that's all I really cared about at the time. I went to college later, and I never thought I could actually study. So I had to, once I was 25, I went back to college and figured it all out, you know.
Nice. Well, you certainly had a capacity to do it because, correct me if I'm wrong, in terms of PJs, the typical paramedic program, like nationwide, is typically about 18 months or 2 years, correct? And don't you guys do it in like 6 months?
Yeah, we went 5 or 6 months right from nothing, from EMT basic, and it was intermediate, and then paramedic by the time 5 months was up, really. You know, and so that was the first time I had to study. So I was scared shitless, you know. buddies that knew how to study, it was a different, but they didn't really study that much. I just kind of studied a couple days before, and it all worked out, luckily. So the brain was
Wow.
Lo and behold.
Yeah, exactly. That'd be a lot of pressure, you know, not being the biggest student in the world, and all of a sudden all the stuff is thrust upon you, knowing that if you don't do well, you're going to kind of... well, let me ask you this. When did this become something that you wanted to do? Did you grow up knowing military was going to be your course of action, or just you fell into it kind of?
I fell into it kind of, just wanted to be tough. And I took my ASVAB through the Marines. And then I walked by an Air Force poster of a bunch of pararescue and combat controllers, and they had motorcycles and airplanes and skydiving and scuba diving, and I was like, what is that? And the guy's like, no one's ever made that. And only 2% of people make it. You won't make it. Don't even think about it. I was like, well, I'm switching to the Air Force. And that's what I'm doing. And back in that day, you'd sign up for pararescue, and you'd have to sign up for another job and sign up for a job to go, and then you'd lose your job once you tried out second week of basic, and then you'd go to pararescue school, and then if you fail out of that, you pretty much were, you're gonna have, they're gonna pick a job for you. So it was a big risk. I signed up to load bombs on a plane, so just to get in.
All right, and then so you get to do your Air Force basic. How was basic for you? Was it a piece of cake?
Basic was the first time I ever had fat on my stomach. Like, it was...
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like,
wow.
I was in supreme shape when I went to basic. I was going to kick this pararescue thing in the ass, and then all of a sudden we're having to do 30 push-ups and run in formation with 50 people. It was like, and I was a runner and I was an athlete, and it was so bad. Like, and then I thought I was going to fail at a PJ school, but luckily I had 6 weeks layover after basic before PJ school started. So then I got in shape again before we started our team event.
Oh, excellent. Now, where was PJ school itself?
In Lackland Air Force Base.
Oh, okay. It's funny you said that because before I left the Atlanta Police Department, I was first or second next in line to go to K-9, and it was a federal certification. So had I gotten that, I actually left prior to my number getting called. It would have been a 13-week course at Lackland Air Force Base for the K-9 certification. So
Lackland was the first 10 weeks. That was the physical portion with the underwater and the running, and the weed out course was Lackland. So we had for 6 weeks, about 100 people tried out, and then 120 made it out of those 6 weeks, and then when we get done, there was 20 people left. So
wow.
Yeah, and I actually picked
that's amazing.
I just knew I wanted to do something badass, so I picked pararescue because I ended up first on the pass test that day, and they were like, 3 people can pick pararescue and 7 people can pick combat control. Which one do you want, Castor? And I was like, I think I want the 3. So I didn't even know it was medical. It is my whole life now, It was like...
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, I always got lucky.
Oh, my... So you literally had no idea where this road was going to take you when you chose that?
Nope. I just knew it seemed to be better because less people could pick it, But I would have
That's incredible.
Pick the other one in the long run. I would, but I like saving.
Yeah, exactly.
Killing people,
Oh, that's amazing. All right, so in terms of the course itself, PJ school is 2 years.
2 years. Yep. The first 10 weeks is at Lackland, and then you go in the pipeline. And the pipelines, we started with airborne school in Fort Benning, and then I went up to Spokane, Washington, where we did a survival school and seer training, where we were out in the woods and then put in prison and stuff, and learned how to be prisoners of war and stuff. And then after that, we went to Key West. Key West was the Army's combat diver school, and and we went there for 5 weeks, and then I went to free fall school for another 5 weeks in Fort Bragg, and then we shipped off to Albuquerque, where we did a year immersive, learned how to be a rescue guy with all your skills you have now. For you're all trained up, so you can do the skydiving and scuba diving. We learned how to rock climb. We learned in the land nav. We learned tactics. We learned our medical was 5 months of the whole year that we were there. And then there was a whole time we learned to be air crew and jumping out of airplanes and rappelling out of helicopters and climbing rope ladders and doing water ops and jumping into the water like with scuba gear and stuff, and it was a lot of fun. It was just exactly what I needed,
Yeah, I was going to ask you, how'd you find it? Did you find it super challenging, or you actually almost loved every day that you were doing all this stuff?
The only thing that made it challenging is that I was drunk every night, so it was harder to. Those 6 mile runs are a little hard in Key West after you party till 3 in the morning and got up at 5 to go run. But I never failed anything. I got right through, and it was it was only hard because I was always hungover. But
okay, that's hilarious. So in terms of all the training, what was the hardest block for you?
I would say the first part had to be. I never really. The first part was the push-ups. In the first part, our push-ups were 70 all the way down, all the way up, push-ups in 2 minutes, and the whole time, every week it went up 5. And I got 65 the week before, and I had to have 70 the final eval. That was the one time that I came close to feeling anything, and ended up with 71 that week.
Nice.
So
impressive.
They were all pretty easy, They were just doable, but it was just hard because we were in party mode.
Yeah, I can't believe that guys weren't a little more not serious, because you're taking it serious, but just focused on not partying during this amount of time or period of time, because the potential.
Yeah. First time away from home, we were too dumb to see what to do it again. It'd be a lot different, but being 20 years old, it was just out there, and it was fun guys and friends that are still my friends. We had a lot of fun.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah,
and we had the athletic ability to do it. That's the thing,
Yeah, and the ability to recover at 20 years old is a little bit different than even 30 years old going that hard. But what gets most guys now in the course itself? Because I know it's a huge attrition rate.
Yeah, it's the water. It's the water.
Water.
It's like you have to do a lot of underwaters. Like to finish the course in the final eval, there's 10 underwaters at a 2-minute interval. So when you start to do an underwater 25 yards, you'd swim back, and then you'd have 1 minute to breathe. It would take about a minute to get down and back. You have a minute to rest, then you have to do another underwater. You have to do iteration of 10 of those. And then they do buddy breathing with full combat buddy breathing. We have a buddy when you have a snorkel back and forth. And I got 2 breaths in 2 minutes. They were just beating on us, trying to steal our snorkel. And you have to share this air supply that they're smashing you with and ripping your goggles off. And you had to ditch in dawn. You had to go down and swim 25 yards and tie 3 knots and then come up and stuff like that. It was just prolonged time underwater that was the mental game that washed people out.
Okay. And was this is the water training very comparable to Navy SEAL water training, or totally different?
For as much as I know about it, I don't think the Navy SEALs, I think they're this is just what I think from reading some books. Theirs is cold. There's cold in the ocean. They have some pool stuff, but I don't think the pool part is a bigger washout thing, as it is for pararescue. I think theirs is just determination and living in a cold environment and not sleeping,
Right. Yeah, I know that part 1 is really tough. I know the second part, pool competency, it appears like they don't lose nearly as many guys, but I was just curious as to whose is more difficult if you guys talk smack between each other back and forth.
We all believe ours is way more difficult, but I can't confirm that, But
yeah, exactly.
I would be willing to bet on it, but I don't want to get my ass kicked by somebody on the street.
It's all a little secret. No one's going to see this anyway.
Yeah.
So you get done with school, 2 years, graduate. I assume everything goes smoothly for you, through the school. And then what happens at that point? Do you choose where you're going?
Yeah, well,
how does that work?
They pretty much assigned us. They assigned us to our units, and I got assigned to Patrick Air Force bases. And there's only 4 places in the world that pararescue can go at the time. They could go to Okinawa, they could go to Iceland, they could go to England, or they could go to Patrick, or they could go to Vegas or a place in New Mexico. So there's like 5 or so. But so I had one of the better ones. It was a good unit. It was a rescue unit. We didn't see much action. We would go on missions to find ships that had sunk and the crew was out there, and none of them that I was on did we ever find anybody.
Okay. And now, how many active duty PJs are there at any one time in the military, in the Air Force?
I think at this time there's probably 400. There was about 300
That's it?
when I was there. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. There's a lot more Navy SEALs than there are pararescuemen, for sure.
Yeah, I think it's about 2,000 active duty, if I'm not mistaken, something around that number. Yeah. Okay. So, other than rescue, what types of roles do you guys fill?
Well, nothing really. We worked out a lot. We had to we didn't do much extra besides we would go in and make sure the med kits were good. Like, you'd be in medical, you'd be in scheduling, you'd be in those kind of things. But nowadays people don't even have to do that. They have a whole support. Like, we had no support back in the 90s.
Okay. So now you got out in what year of your training?
I did 6 years active. I got out in '99, and then went to the National Guard in New York until 2002.
No, excuse me. Once you graduated PJ school, that was what year?
95.
95. Okay.
Yep.
So you're assigned to Patrick Air Force Base. Now, what else are you guys doing other than? Are you just doing rescue missions out of that base, or you're getting deployed, or?
We would go to Northern Watch and Southern Watch at the time. It's a pretty slow time for there was no combat stuff going on. So we go to Northern Watch or Southern Watch, and Southern Watch was C-130s and H-60s, and they would we'd be on call in case Saddam actually hit one of our planes. Every day he would fly in the no-fly zone, and our fighter jets would go chase him out. And we were on call every time someone was in the box, and they had the chance to get shot down. So we would either be in our C-130 and we would parachute out, and we had four-wheelers at the time. Now they have fancy, buggies and stuff, but we had four-wheelers that we'd bug out with a stretcher on the back, and or the helicopter. The helicopter was in Kuwait at the time, but Saudi Arabia was the C-130s. And then if the helicopter could get there, if it was within range, then the helicopter would go. Well, the helicopter would probably be the plan to come get us too.
Okay. So now, once fighting, did you guys have any actual missions, or really nothing kicked off during your whole deployment?
Yeah, it was. I went to a lot of those Northern Watch and Southern Watch. It was the same thing in Northern Watch, but we were in Turkey at that time. But nothing. It was so boring. We always were ready. We were always ready and never got any action. So that's why I got out. And then when I went to the Guard in '99, I left for the Guard. And, still it's quiet. That's a quiet time for combat kind of stuff, And
Yep.
I went to the Guard, and I went to college. I started going to college, wanted to be a MD, and let me think. So then I was like in my 2.5 years of school, and 9/11 happened, and I was in a test, and I came out of the test, and I looked at the screen, and I saw what was going on, and I called my unit, and they were like, "Nah, we can't get you here. Just stand down. We'll wait for you to. We'll wait to tell you what's going on." So me and a buddy got in the car, and we just drove straight to New York at 90 miles an hour. Never got pulled over, and we made it by the next day at daybreak, and
Really?
and helped out there because we knew we weren't going to be there. We weren't going to get there if we could, But nobody was flying. They weren't going to get me there, So we made it, hung out, and it was the most massive. I don't know if you saw Ground Zero, but it's undescribable how large it was. Like, pictures don't do it justice. You walk around that corner and you look, you're like, holy shit! It's like the biggest mountains of rubble you could ever imagine.
Yeah, I remember my cousin was a lieutenant in the NYPD at the time, and I was actually an Atlanta police officer. It was nuts because my ex-wife and I flew back on the 10th from New York. There were bad thunderstorms. We were supposed to leave about 8 o'clock. We ended up leaving about 12:30. Got back to Atlanta, got home about 3 a.m. And next thing I know, the phone was ringing off the hook. My father telling me to turn the TV on, and then saw what we saw. And we actually got deployed. I was on a motorcycle squad at the time. We shut down the Atlanta airport, and it was just eerie. We were there for about a week, and it was obviously nothing going in or out. We had one medical flight that took off. I think it was someone died, and it was a transplant organ. And I was outside. We heard the plane take off. It was like the eeriest thing. One plane at the entire Atlanta airport, one of the busiest airports in the nation. But I went up about 3 weeks later, back to New York, and my cousin got me down there. And your mind just can't process what you're looking at. I was looking at it, and I'm like, this looks like the biggest Tonka toy set I've ever seen in my life that just got, like, mangled by a kid. Like, you're looking at 100-something story buildings, and there's nothing left. Like, it was mind-boggling.
Yeah. And there was no way in to get anything. Like, it was so twisted with steel and concrete. Like, there was very few spots to go or anybody to ever make it to rescue. Like, one lady got rescued out of there when we were there, but other than that, it was just, unfortunately, it was just parts and pieces,
Yeah. No, it was sad. And actually, my father was an FDNY fireman until 96. So he was down there at the other bombing at the World Trade Center in 93. He was actually called a chief's aide. He drove the chief of the fire department. And had he still been there, he retired about 5 years prior, he probably would have perished because Ray Downey Jr., who was the chief of the department at the time, who perished, was down there. My father probably would have been right next to him. Again, had he still been active. So it was just amazing how many lives were touched, how many stories of one, like I just echoed, like, yeah, almost lost my father. And, it was just, I remember I had survivor's guilt for the longest time, brother. And it wasn't like I was even a part of the NYPD. I'm like, it was so, the dynamics are so weird in life sometimes and how your mind works. Like, why am I having survivor's guilt? I wasn't there. I had no part of this. I couldn't have saved anyone. But still, I'm like, I was, it just broke my heart. And all these cops and firemen died. And it was just, I don't know. I'm sure you were dealing with crazy emotions yourself, especially being down there and seeing everything you were seeing.
Yeah. It was definitely a life-changing experience, that's for sure.
So now, when you realize that we're going to war, you're still National Guard at this time, correct?
Yep.
So you get activated?
So I called them and told them I wanted to go, and they didn't have, the active duty people were jumping on it like crazy. So there was limited spots for PJs because there's only so many you can have in each place. You probably have 6 or 8 in each location. So
okay.
So I told them to deploy me, and I ended up. They did, but then they sent me to Northern Watch. so somehow it wasn't in the cards. So in hindsight, it was the way it was supposed to be. But when I was younger, I was like, I missed the show again.
Yeah. Timing is everything in life, brother.
Yeah.
So we actually did not touch on the Khartoum Towers bombing in Saudi Arabia in '96. Can you tell us about that story?
Yeah. So it's June 25th. It was at 9:52 at night. I had just so that day started kind of weird. We were on a C-130 and we were doing a training mission. We were flying to Kuwait. We were doing air refueling with the helicopter in the C-130, and me and my buddies were just sitting in the back. PJs don't have a job on the plane. We just sit there and wait, and so we get about 10 minutes out from the airport, from the base in Dhahran, Saudi Arabia, and one of our engines failed on our plane. And so then I'm on comm and I'm listening, and there's 5 people in the cockpit, and they're all talking about, one guy's like, hey, let's just go to Kuwait and break the plane there so then we can have a little day out of our monotony and they'll bring parts to us. And the other guy, these guys all died that night. The other guy said, no, we need to go back. We're only 10 minutes out. So we need to return to base. And he followed protocol and returned to base. And we landed. And then me and my buddies ended up going to the gym. And we went to the gym. And every day after we were done with the gym, we would do abs together, like, so to make sure we did our abs, And that day I was like, I'm skipping abs, guys. Like, I'd already missed my sister's graduation from high school, so I was like, I was going to go home right after. So I was making sure I was 30 days later when I was going home that I was going to be there for, and so they picked on me for leaving, and I just walked out. So I walked to the bomb, and I sat there, and every day I would get a protein shake after I worked out, and I would sit in this one spot. And that day I didn't get a protein shake. I went to the other room. We had an intelligence room. I went there and got on our phone and called the unit, and one of my buddies answered. The guy actually that got me into ayahuasca, he answered the phone. And so that's
our boy Dan, right?
Yep, Danny Murray.
Yep.
I tell him he saved my life twice. So his friendship saved my life because we talked for 14 minutes, and I reached out to the phone because you only stay on the phone those days for 15 minutes or it would flag something. So you hang up at 15 minutes.
Okay.
So I reached out my right arm out to the computer and moved the mouse, and I saw on the computer 9:52 p.m. And as soon as I saw that, the computer lifted off. Like, I heard an audible click, and the air felt like it got sucked away. And I was like, "What is this?" You don't know when you're going to get blown up. You don't know what it is, so your brain's processing really fast. And the computer starts lifting off the table, and sparkles come in the air, and light, and just this magnificent show of dirt and just brightness. And then I'm thinking, as that computer's lifting off the table, I'm like, oh, these guys are in trouble. They just fucked up a government computer, because we played a lot of pranks on each other. And then I was sitting against the wall. I was sitting maybe 2 feet from the wall that evaporated, and I was leaning back, and I had my feet kicked up on the table in front of me, so I was directly in a catapult position from the bomb. So the only thing that was exposed was my head and neck and one right arm from my shoulders up, and
Okay.
so it launched me into the ceiling, and
Whew.
and I broke a rib on the ceiling, and then I came down and jammed my shoulder pretty good, and then got in a fetal position and like waited for all the shit to fall around me. And I swear, I always tell people, I was like, I was in such a small ball. I swear, I put my hands in my ass and pulled myself into the smallest ball I could. I was like, so, and I waited for everything to end, and then I was like, well, I got these shards of glass sticking out of my neck. I had all kinds of glass. I had a glass that almost went all the way through my arm that they took out a week later.
Cool.
When it was in my bicep, but it came through my tricep. And
Jesus.
yeah, it was magnificently strong. But I had these shards of glass, and being a paramedic, I knew you don't get up and you have stuff sticking out of your neck. You could get paralyzed, you know?
Yep.
So I yelled help. And then as I yelled help, as it was coming out, I was like, what is that? Like, you can't yell help. That sounds horrible. Like, I'm not yelling that again. So, like, I was, like, picking on myself. You're being weak, you know, after I just got blown up.
Exactly.
Toxic masculinity, you know?
Pick that arm up and walk over there yourself.
Yeah, so I keep my spine straight, and I slowly get out of the rubble. And I only had gym shorts on. And I get out of the rubble, and I stand up, and I'm like, I gotta get out of here. Another bomb might go off. I gotta get out of here as fast as I can. So I start staggering and jumping, but it's pitch dark. It's 10 at night. It's pitch dark, and I stand up and I fall, and I stand up and I fall. Like I'm just going up and down, you know. And then all of a sudden, some little voice in my head's like, just stay right where you are. And I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna stay here. I put hands on both of my knees, and I just stood there for a second. And my friends went in the building the next day to look for people, and they told me that my blood trail went straight to the fifth floor ledge, and my blood was dripping off the ledge. So I stopped right on the edge instead of walking out the building. And then the wind came and it wrapped around my chin. That was my the first time I ever felt anything spiritual, but I passed it off as just the wind, you know. I was like, I rationalized it like I wasn't being saved by God, you know, whatever you want to call it. And so like it made me turn my head. It wrapped around my chin from the right side to the left, and I turned and I looked, and the building, the dust went out of the room, and I saw a doorway, and the door was closed. But little did I know it was a side door to go to the side room. It wasn't the door to get out. It was directly in front of, you know, straight on from where the bomb went. So I go over to the door, and it's all rubbles all up to the doorknob. So I'm standing on the doorknob, and I'm like, I'll just knock this door down. I've seen this happen before, you know. So I throw my shoulder. I start kicking it a little bit, and I was like, it's such a weak little kick. I was so injured, and I was like, well, that ain't gonna work. I'll throw my shoulder into it, and I'll break this door down. I threw my shoulder into it, and then I realized I had an injured shoulder, and I was like on the ground again, like, oh shit.
Oh.
Then I turned my head, and I looked, and I saw that I was at the wrong door. So then I walked out of the building, so I had a buddy that was just, yeah, I was like, dumbass, you know. So I had a buddy that it was a big oak door because it was an intelligence. We had our guns there. We had all our intel in there and stuff. So, and the doors had blown off, and a buddy had just walked out of the room, told me he was going to the gym. And I was like, Bill must have left like 20 minutes ago. I was thinking, but he had just closed the door, and the door blew off the hinges, and he had a black and blue from the bottom of his shin to the top of his shoulder where the door knocked him out. And so I walk out into this little foyer area, and there's a dude standing there pushing the elevator buttons. He was all rattled, and I was like, what are you doing, man? I was like, it's not gonna work, you know.
They're done.
Yeah, and then I realized that I have an arterial bleed in my arm, and I'm holding it with my hand, and I realized I only have gym shorts on, and I was like, when am I going to tie a tourniquet on this thing, you know? I had my finger on my arm, and I had digging deep in there trying to stop the bleeding, and I see this guy like laying on the ground, and I pick him up, I pick him up by the help get him up, and I was like, he's crying, and I pick him up, and I'm like, give me your fucking shirt, and he's like, I'm not wearing a shirt. I'm like, damn it! Like, all I need is a shirt to my arm, you know. And so I throw his arm around my shoulders, and then the glass goes into my neck some more, and I'm like, shit. So
Ooh.
then I like kind of shimmy up under him, and I'm like, he's got a broken leg, and we start walking down the stairway, and then I realized I was bleeding a little too much, so I was like, listen, you got one good leg, you need to hop out of here on yourself. I need to go get the Humvee has my med kit in. All right, I'm back. All right, all right. The Humvee has a med kit in it, and which I didn't know had got blown up. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
All right, sorry about that. All right,
Yeah,
the
no
Humvee
sweat.
had a med kit in it. What's that?
No problem.
All right, the Humvee had a med kit in it, and but the Humvee had gotten blown up, so I didn't know that. So I go down and I walk. I was so disoriented. I walked all the way down to the basement and looked at a wall, and I was like, "Where's the door?" You know, I was like, I had to climb back up the stairs to get out on the first floor. You know, and I go out and I see a girl that was a medic at the hospital that we knew, and I was like, "Hey, Darcy, look at my neck." And she was like, she looked at my neck and she turned pale white, and I was like,
Really?
Shit. You know,
Not the color I was looking for, Darcy.
yeah. She's like, just sit down, Eric. And I was like, okay. So I sat down, and we started a triage point, but I was just sitting there, and I couldn't help. And I sent a kid over to get the med ruck to try to help people, but the Humvee was blown up. And then like I started to tighten up, and everything started to tighten up, like adrenaline stopped or something, you know. Then I couldn't even, like, hardly stand all of a sudden. It was like I was just turned into an invalid. And they got a Suburban. Somebody got in one of the Suburbans and loaded like 6 of us up in the Suburban. It was a young guy, and he kept hitting the brakes on the Suburban, and he kept jolting me, and it kept jolting my neck. And I was like, I got pissed off, and I was like, stop the car. I stopped the car, and then I just got out, and I walked to the hospital. Like, I walked maybe a quarter mile to the hospital. And then I get there, and there's chaos. Somebody's needing a chest tube, and I'm wanting to help, and I can't do it. I needed an IV really bad. You know, I had my arm all stopped up by then, had something tied on it. And I lay down on the hospital floor. It was a clinic, really. I lay down on the clinic floor, and everything tightened up. And one of my buddies walked in and, like, couldn't get an IV on me. A PJ can't get an IV on you, you know you're in trouble. You know,
Yeah.
So he's trying to get an IV on me, and then I got then I got sent to a Saudi Arabian hospital where I spent 3 days, and then and when I was at the hospital, I was still joking around and stuff. Like, they were asking me how I was doing, and it's funny how it's about a toothbrush, but I was they were asking me how am I doing. I'm like, no, I'm pissed. And they were like, what are you mad at? And I was like I've been here for 2 days, and I haven't, whatever, it was a day probably, and I haven't got a toothbrush to brush my teeth with, you know, just fucking. But so that gained some rapport because I was the only guy that wasn't, like, sad, you know,
Yeah.
got blown up. So I was still having fun with the thing. So they were like, well, we want you to the Secretary of State's coming in tomorrow, and we want you to be interviewed by the Secretary of State about one of the survivors. So I was in my hospital bed. Warren Christopher at the time comes in, and then I get to be on CNN, and it wasn't much of an interview, but and then I flew off to Launchstool Medical Center and stayed there for 2 or 3 days, and then got medevac to the U.S. back to Patrick Air Force Base, where the military had actually flown my parents down, and they were there when we arrived, and it was wonderful. And I talked them into not putting me in the hospital when I got home, and then my parents just took care of me, and I was fine. You know, it's just beaten up pretty bad, broken rib and shoulder is all fucked up, but I was good. But I got back on status about 6 weeks later. After that,
And how many, did you lose any PJs in the bombing?
we did not. Everybody was at the gym except for the one guy
Really?
who was sleeping. So
Wow.
the one guy, the one guy that returned. No, I wasn't the one guy. There was another guy. Mike Atkins was his name. He would be a good person for you to interview about other things, but or Kobar even. But he was in the bathroom waiting. He was He was fixing his hair, always fixing his hair, I think. But, he was in a little nook in the middle of the building in the bathroom, and he got a piece of glass in his forehead, nicked an artery in his forehead that was squirting all over the place, and another piece in his knee. And he did a lot of good stuff, saved a lot. Well, didn't save a lot of people, but did a lot of the recovery. Probably got a lot of people out. I'm not, it was a little chaotic, but they took control of everything and made sure everybody was out that needed to be out.
It's amazing. So did you actually know any brothers that were killed in the in that bombing?
Just the people that were air crew that were with me. There was
okay.
There was a young kid that was a flight that was a load master named Justin Wood that died at 20 years old.
Wow.
And he was the one I was the closest with because we were about the same age.
Okay.
But I still keep in touch with his parents, and it's just sad, but that's the way life is supposed to be.
Yeah. Now, how do you do processing this mentally after it's all said and done? Things are quieting down. You have time by yourself. Were you struggling, or? So
I told the story so many times and said it with humor, that I never got PTSD, but I didn't realize that I had severe survivor's guilt. Like after the 19 people died, and I was, if not the closest person, I was right there. Like I walked away. I get grace with life, and they just died, and it wasn't. They were mangled. It was just bizarre that I could walk away and still have a life. There was another guy that was on the floor below me in the same spot, and he was misidentified. The parents told him he was dead, and one of my buddies walked in and saw his hairy toes and figured out who he was. But unfortunately, he had brain injury to the point where he doesn't really hold a job now, so that was sad. But it was the survivor's guilt that I never pinned down until one ayahuasca journey, where it all came to me that it was okay that everybody died. That was part of their mission in this life, and they had beautiful lives, and that was where they were supposed to go, and it just wasn't my time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's funny because I think if you would have interviewed those guys, and you kind of present them with the fact that this is the way they're going to die, most of them would probably accept it. Like, you know what, man? Maybe I'm not going out fighting, but I'm going out, still going out a warrior, and something they love to do. And listen, none of us is getting out of this game alive, number one. But, obviously they were way too young to go. But it's one of those things, man, we have to reconcile in our minds. Like, this is just the way life plays out sometimes, and there's nothing we can do about it.
Yeah. Yeah, but, a lot of... I think that's what started my downfall as a survivor's guilt. I always couldn't understand why, But,
yep.
It's so simple once you find yourself, It took me 37 ayahuascas to figure out that was okay,
Yeah.
It was a hard nut to crack,
Hey, you know what? 37 was a magic number, but 37 was a number, and hopefully it'll let you heal. And we both know there's so many things that happen during these journeys that it's so miraculous. But we'll definitely get to that shortly here. So. You get back after this bombing, you heal up. What are you doing from that point on until, we were speaking about 9/11? Is there anything, notable of big substance stuff that happened in your life, change your life, trajectory of your life changed in any way in this time?
No, I just went back to doing the pararescue thing and had fun, always looking for the mission, but never getting it. And then I went to the National Guard, and I started going to school and deployed with them after 9/11. But that was, I don't think much besides the everyday of a PJ kind of training, and and that's about it.
All right. I find it quite humorous that a kid that didn't like school at all, graduated to 2.0, was going back to medical school at one point, and then ends up going to dental school. It's just, I guess you didn't find anything that you loved or really wanted to do as a young man, so it didn't really get your attention. And then when you find this focus in something that you really want, it's a totally different ballgame, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, and I wanted to be an MD. I mean, my buddy, he's an MD now. He was really mad at me when I got into dental school, like, because I just applied to dental school on a whim. I never had a feeling. I never like, my wife at the time worked for a dentist, and I just saw he had a good life and he could be with his family, and he was off, and I was back in the drinking days where I was thinking, how can I be on call? Like, how do you stay home on the weekend and not drink? So once again, all the wrong reasons, I end up in the right place.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right. So at this point, you out of the you go to the military ends when for you? What year?
2002.
Okay,
October
and then
2002.
you go right into dental school essentially at that point.
Yep. Then I had 4 years of dental school, and
then where is this?
that was 8 hours a day.
Where is dental school itself geographically?
In Augusta, Georgia.
Okay,
It was a medical college of Georgia at the time. So,
gotcha. And then, so you graduate medical school and you start work at a mental hospital as a dentist?
Yep.
How does that one come about?
I don't even know. Like, I knew I was going to start my private practice. I didn't want to work for anybody. Most people go to a residency or work for someone else for a little while, but I was done. I just wanted to do it on my own. So, like, somebody told me the job was open, so I applied and I got it. But the whole time I had bought the building to start my office, and I renovated it, and I worked at the mental hospital for 5 days a week. And then on the off hours, I was renovating the office and getting loans for the dental office. And it took me about 6 months to get everything squared away before we could start in November of 2006.
Okay. Now you have to have one or two great stories from your job in the mental hospital. Anything you can share with us?
They're a little off color, but
Oh yeah, that's our audience here, brother.
Yeah. All right. Well, one guy was an axe murderer. He killed his mom with an axe, and he was scared of the needle. Like, and I was like, "You serious, dude? Like, seriously, was your mom scared of an axe?" Is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
you did a Lizzie Borden and you scared of a needle?
yeah. And another time, like, these people were so sweet, these mentally challenged people. Some people would come from the community and their parents would bring them in or whatever, so they lived outside. They weren't necessarily, a lot of the people in the mental hospital were just in cribs, and they didn't have much for, like, awareness,
Right.
But this one girl, she would repeat everything I would say. That was her thing. She just, like a parrot, she just repeat everything. And I'd be like, "I'm about to numb you up." She'd be like, "I'm about to numb you up." And it got to the point where I was like, "I'm about to pull your tooth. I'm about to pull your tooth." And I was like, "All right, let's get this tooth." She'd be like, "All right, let's get this tooth." So I just led that all along. We're like, "All right, get it. I'm going to get it. I'm going to get it. Get it. Let's get that tooth." And we screamed back and forth. That was my funnest experience.
That's great. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Not to make fun of Edge. It's just the whole picture in my mind. Yeah, the whole picture in my mind is pretty funny though. I don't think I could stop. I think I would just keep going for like hours at a time. You gonna repeat me now?
You gonna get it out?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's great. All right, so you start practicing, having private practice. Now, totally devoid of anything with the military, right? National Guard's done. You are literally completely out. And as a dentist now, so how do you find a transition from military to white collar worker, dentist, Mr. Professional now?
Yeah, it was a severe loss of identity. It was horrible.
Can imagine.
Like, I had all my boys, and everybody was tough, and man's world. It was bad to go in a dentist world. It was like,
I can't imagine, brother.
Yeah. I didn't have many friends that were dentists at the time. I have a couple good ones, but in dental school I keep in touch with two people. It's just a different kind of person. They're good people. They're just not my people.
Yeah. I mean, all your boys are kind of flying by the seat of their pants, hair on fire, adrenaline rushes. Type A personalities. I mean, hyper masculinized guys, all alpha, I'm sure, and now you're in an office setting. I don't mean to demean it. It's a great profession, but
right.
Drilling holes in teeth when you were doing what you were doing, halo jumps, high hill jumps or whatever they are. I mean, what a difference.
Yeah.
Did you have trouble like kind of putting that away? That loss of identity changing?
So I was pretty focused on building this practice. I started from scratch, and I still had fun with my new friends, partying on the weekends and stuff. But I met a lot of good people, but
Yep.
it was just I was just always an outsider. I was always
Right.
that guy that's not like us,
Yeah.
But
No, we're just different, man. We're not better. We're not worse. It's just different, and only the guys who have this mindset will understand, man. It's just different. We like doing different things. We like adrenaline. We like, I hate to say it, like life or death experiences, man. Me and my buddy were shot at one night. My boy Lupo in Thomasville. It's a project next to the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary, and we got him later on. Got done with it, and I'm like, Luke, that was one of the craziest adrenaline rushes I ever had in my life. I'm like, that was fucking awesome. And no one, you'll understand, but not many people who've not done this will understand. Like there's nothing that can compare that or chasing another man, like hunting another man. Just it's incomparable.
Yeah,
especially evil men.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would have loved being a cop. That would have been fun.
Yeah, all military, same thing. Cops being military being cops. Many times they are, but essentially it's the same mindset. A little bit of a different job, but absolutely same mindsets. Lunatics. All right, so you're going through a dental career. You're married now. 3 kids, kind of settling into life in South Georgia. And as time goes on, go through a divorce. I myself been through it. It's almost cliche, man, between cops, firemen, military. Like, we all have to have at least one. It's incredible. But at this point in your life, how are things going for you as because even if they're good, so to speak, and civil, it's one of the most horrible experiences of your life, especially with kids. So, how was it for you going through this period of time?
As in married years?
Yeah, as kind of the marriage is winding down, and
yeah,
you're finding yourself stressing out, and
yeah. Well, I was trapped in a marriage that neither of us knew how to love each other the way we needed, I guess. So it was no one's real fault, but I was the one that was going out cheating and being deceptive at the time, But the divorce went pretty bad, and COVID happened, and I was alone, and I don't know, just wasn't good. It was a lot of drinking, a lot of Xanax and Adderalls and running. Luckily, me and my buddies all decided to run an ultra marathon, so we started doing that, and they all bailed out, and then before it all ended, because that's quite a thing to do. But luckily, I had nothing but time, sitting in my apartment alone. So
yep. And how far is the ultra marathon?
It was a 50K, so 31 miles.
Okay.
Yeah, it was in the mountains of North Georgia.
Oh, beautiful.
I want to do it again. I just need to find the time to train for it, because when you're running 20 miles, it takes 4 hours,
That's nuts.
It takes a long time to run. It's just every Saturday and Sunday running 16, 20, it got to be a lot, but it was good. The world was stopped at the time. The dental office was stopped for 6 weeks. And luckily I got through it.
Oh, absolutely. So, you were talking about, Adderall and drinking and stuff like that. I had an opioid problem. Got help for it in 2012, but again, I was in tough marriage, trying to make her happy, trying to make my family happy. They didn't get along. No one was happy. I wasn't happy. And I've been taking this medicine I've prescribed for years, Tramadol, for my back problems, and just realized that it was dulling the pain at some point, and I just started taking more of it, and then more of it, and more of it. And I remember running out one month, and at the time you could order on the internet, so I'd get it from my doctor on the internet. And I remember, saying to myself, do I want to have the next month being semi-happy, or I want to go back to feeling the way I was? I'm like, nah, let me order some more. And, before I know it, man, I'm having I had probably 8 seizures over 3 years. I was taking on like up to 50 a day, and just generally ruining my life. And it's funny because I remember Brett Favre was addicted to Vicodins years ago, and he did a press conference and he was talking about how many he was doing, and he was up to like 50 something a day. And I was like, holy shit, that's insane. Flash forward to like years ahead, I'm doing the same thing. And afterwards, I thought about it like, that's insane. I was doing that amount, but ended up getting clean, thank God. I realized I needed help after my last one, and I'm like, I'm not living like this anymore. And I do this podcast because I want other vets and first responders who are going through it to see that all my guests and myself are like them. They are us, we are them. And, there's going to be people who are going through their low points right now watching this. And, I want to bring our lowest points to them to show them that, listen, man, even though you're there right now and we were there is help, and you can heal and become a better man or woman and find happiness in life again, because life's a beautiful thing. We go through pain, it ebbs and flows, but in general, it's beautiful, and you must appreciate everything you go through. So, as the only way out is through.
That's right.
As we say.
You look back now, and it was all needed to get right here. Like, I don't regret any of it. I'm grateful for all of it. And for so long, it was just like a trap you couldn't get out of. And you knew you needed to, but there was no way you were going to listen. And now I see it with other people when, we're trying to get them to ayahuasca. They're not ready until they're ready.
Yeah.
And
it's weird as you're going through it. You're almost like an actor, and you're almost like in this play that is going to end, and it's going to end miserably. You're thinking to yourself, like, no one else knows this now, or I don't think anyone else knows this now, but eventually they're all going to find out, because I'm just not able to do this myself. And that's what happened to me. That's what happens to a lot of guys, and it's humiliating and embarrassing when it happens. I've since forgiven myself. I'm cool with it. Even the first time talking like publicly about it on a podcast, it was tough. Now, I'm like, listen, man, if I don't open up and talk about my lowest points, then I'm a poser for all these guys and girls that I'm trying to help, and I'm worthless. So I want to show them, how bad are my lowest points, and the fact that you indeed can heal. And, we're going to talk about that journey for you now. So you do your ultra marathon, and how were you introduced to the medicine?
So Dan Murray invited like 6 of us to go for his 2-year anniversary of his ayahuasca anniversary, and we had a friend that was doing a lot of drugs, meth and cocaine and all that. It was just, I'd been to his house and tried to help him, but he was just in Cuckooville, like the walls were talking and shit, and I tried to call an intervention, and he was like, this ayahuasca thing will work, and I was like, so I knew he wasn't going to go, so I called Dan and I told him I wasn't going. And then one of the girls at work was like, hey, maybe you need it. And I was like, what? Why would I need it? I didn't even know what ayahuasca was. I never looked it up. I never looked at the internet. And then I thought, a hallucinogen? That'd be cool, such a dumbass, And so we're planning on going. That one friend that's hooked is planning on going, but I knew he wasn't going to show up. So I knew Dan was going to be there. And we went. He didn't show up. He ended up showing the next week, though. So he ended up, because I told him I pretty much cut him off and told him, I knew he was dead at that point. Like, it was like he needed hard love at the time. So he ended up having a huge awakening the next week, and he's never done drugs anymore. Now he's like torn with Montgomery from Montgomery Gentry. Like, he's got a career singing, and he's married.
Awesome.
Grandkid, and he's doing good.
Nice. Beautiful.
So I went and I did the ayahuasca that night, and not much magic happened. And then I did it the next day, in the middle of the day, and it was just, I didn't even know you were supposed to purge. I didn't even know it was a thing. Like, and I started violently purging and thinking, what the hell is this? And then I did it again that night, and I went for it again the third time in the weekend, and I woke up the next morning actually believing in God for the first time. Like, I saw it was like I was riding in a train and looking at a building, and then the building would be gone, and then every thought was like you were looking out the window of a train, I had so much stuff going on in my mind. It was like I was just watching things go by. I couldn't even think about them quick enough before they would go to the next thing that I was fucked up with.
Yep.
It was like flipping through a book. And it was just chaos. And so that weekend, it changed me forever. It changed my style of music. It changed, it just made me way more peaceful, and I knew that I had changed. But I was still couldn't figure out, like, I knew there was more layers to the onion. Like, I had figured out how to connect with my children better. I was going to apologize to my ex-wife. I was taking accountability. I started taking accountability for what my actions were, basically. And then I went back 2 weeks later, and then I went back like a month after that, and then I did 20 journeys the first year that I was there, and
Really?
and life had just changed. Everybody knows the before and after me, but I never had a full spiritual awakening until, once again, that 37th time. I was talking to Brad before, and he was explaining non-duality to me, and I didn't know what the heck he was talking about, but
Yeah. Brad gets deep, man.
Yeah, he was feeding me just enough information. He's like, I call him Brad, my guru,
Yeah.
And, that's why he's in charge of Inekawa, because he knows how to connect with people and then show them the way, or give them enough information to process,
That he does.
But forever I thought, why am I going back? Why do I keep going back? Am I addicted to something else? But
Yep.
it was like the bombing never came up at all for like that until that 37th time. That was like magic. It was just like I went in and I forgave myself for everything, and then I forgave all the people around me for all their bullshit. And once I gave that forgiveness to myself, life changed. And then ayahuasca, in a sense, brought my grandmother to me in spirit form, and she showed me like the universe and how God really is and what the universe is. It was magic. And then after that, I just kept going back, because I was like, now I know why we're here. So I was like, I want to find more. I want to see more of myself and more of the spirituality, and grow my connection to God better. And then Soul Quest closed, and me and Brad and a few other people started in Inekawa, and we just realized the medicine needs to be spread. So we're not out for profit. We are just out to help people. Soul Quest had this problem with the owner was out for his own profit, but he was a good guy, but he just never got the message, is what it seemed like.
Yeah, and you and I were talking about it. I find it so ironic that someone that started a facility like that to heal people never kind of got the message himself about healing and, the purposes for it, that being non-monetary. Listen, I have no problem monetizing, but first and foremost, that should not be your primary objective.
Yeah. Yeah, we're giving this to the world as our plan, and people have a place. And 3 or 4 churches broke off from that. So there's many places that people can go with good people that are just out for the right reasons. They're just there to help people. They're just there to love, to give hugs and guidance.
Yeah, it's the truth. I mean, it's such a noble pursuit. And, like you, my life has changed. Like I say, I was reborn after my first journey. It was a Friday night. We drank Friday night, Saturday night as well. My wife and I attended Soul Quest as well this past March. And I remember going there, I was nervous, wasn't sure what to expect. My journey started because this is, Unafraid is not a proclamation. This is a company of a man named Eddie Penny. He's a former Navy SEAL, Team 6 guy. And Eddie Penny was getting interviewed by Sean Ryan on his podcast. And during the course of that interview, Eddie was recounting his story of the Extortion 17 incident, in which a Chinook was shot down in Afghanistan, and all 38 souls aboard, including 17 SEALs, were killed, one of which was named Jason Workman, his best friend. And Eddie's recounting the story of bringing his best friend's body back to his hometown, and he's visibly upset as he's doing so. And looking back now, this is almost 2 years later, after, seriously kind of analyzing what led me to feel this way, I think it's that Eddie was just a absolute warrior, and as he's crying, it let me know it was okay to cry. And as he's crying, at the same time, this call of a 2-year-old found floating in a pool named Dana Sikorsky that I had 5 years ago popped in my head, and I began just bawling like a baby. And I still remember my first reaction, which is nuts, is to look into my house, make sure my wife had not come home from food shopping, because I was embarrassed about crying, because showing emotion is weakness. And meanwhile, my wife's a life coach and would have encouraged me to just keep crying. But I realized right then and there I had PTSD, and I was always mistaken. I thought PTSD was caused like things like you with the bombing, and it is, but I thought that was the sole causation of PTSD. But you don't have to see your brother or sister getting killed next to you. Mine was from being inside the most devastatingly intimate moments of other people's lives, over and over and over and over. And at the time, man, you're just hyper-focused on your mission, and you don't even stop to think about it. And you just compartmentalize and bury the shit, because you can't absorb everyone else's pain around you, man. And you just can't, or you would cease to function. Yeah. But after I retired and I started thinking about things, and this moment came up, I'm like, man, I got PTSD. And then I realized, like, instantaneously that's what it was. Realized I needed to heal. I needed help, but I didn't think traditional therapy was going to do it for me. I didn't think I was going to go to some guy or girl sitting behind a desk. I was going to tell them things I've done, things I've seen, and they're going to be able to help me in any way, shape, or form. But I'm also, and had been, seeing Special Force operators on Sean Ryan's podcast and others talking about their plant-based medicine journey and their healing. And, talking about some of the highest fortitude, mentally strong fortitude men in the world. Delta Force, SEALs, PJs, Green Berets, Recon Marine, I mean, everyone. And they come back broken men from war, but then they're talking about their healing journey. I'm like, you know what, man? I have to try this. If it's working for them, why wouldn't it work for me? But I went to Soul Quest that first week, and I'm nervous. My buddy Wiz Buckley calls it nerve-sighted. You're nervous and excited at the same time. But I remember when I drank, and it kicked in about 30, 45 minutes later. And I remember putting my hands up in the air, and I'm crying. And I could picture, most people say they sense a female presence. And it was the same for me. It's all, I was watching a big screen TV, and Mother Ayahuasca was in the left-hand corner, and she was kind of talking to me. And I remember I threw my hands up in the air, and I'm crying. I'm like, you have to help me. I don't know what to do. Please take this rage and anger away. I'm like, I don't need it anymore. This ego, just take it. And it was like everything I asked for, man. It was like snap a finger. It was just given to me. Just felt lighter and lighter and lighter. And me and my father didn't have a good relationship. He's deceased. And in the journey, she was bringing him to me. But I finally realized he's not going to show. And I threw my hands up in the air. I'm like, fucking coward. I knew he wouldn't show. He couldn't talk about his feelings. And he actually forewent a relationship with his son because he could not show emotion during the entirety of my life. So it's sad. I mean, I'm not sad anymore, but it's just sad that he couldn't have a relationship with his son because he thought showing emotion was weakness. But I came out of that. She told me that feeling and showing emotion is strength. And I remember watching the volunteers at Soul Quest that day or that night, and I'm like, I want to be like them, Mother. They're so graceful and empathetic and loving. I'm like, that's the man I want to be. And it's funny because my wife's like, you sound like a monster. You're not a monster. I'm like, I know, but I just want to be a better man. And she told me, she's like, you're no longer that. Your time is over. You're not a cop anymore. And she's like, everything that went along with that was up here is now down here. She's like, if you ever need it again, you're a warrior. You could call on it. It'll always be there. But everything that went with that is gone. And it was like, I just put it to peace. It was like at peace, like that, instantaneously. And I remember, two guys that I used to work with, friends and coworkers from my Suffolk County PD, committed suicide 3 weeks before, a week apart. And I never had any intention of getting into this space. But as clearly as you and I are talking, as I'm coming out of my journey, the universe is like, you're healed. And obviously it's not linear, you ebb and flow. But essentially, told me you are healed from this PTSD. Your life's pursuit is now to go forth and help other first responders and vets heal theirs. And I literally said out loud, okay. Knew that was my life's purpose. I had no idea how it was going to be implemented. But I'm like, this is my life's purpose until the day I die. And that was it, man. So from there, I started thinking about what I wanted to do. This podcast being huge because I want to reach as many people as I can. I want to bring this medicine to as many as I can. Interviewing guys like you who people are going to see this story, and someone's life is going to be changed by watching this podcast, just the way it was for me, is, to me, like, it's so powerful. I don't know. I don't even have words for it. But I just know that I'm meant to be here. And I've gotten several messages just in the past 2 weeks from guys, hardened men, who are like, brother, what you're doing is making such a difference in my life. Keep doing it. And it's indescribable, you know, especially nationwide. I get, like, Instagram DMs from guys and girls, mostly guys, though. And they're asking me for help. Like, it's the most humbling thing in the world. And I don't mean this from a low esteem perspective. I'm like, who am I? You know, these guys like trust me to help them. I mean, it's beautiful, and it's all I want to do. And you know, like you're doing. I mean, you've been in this so much longer than I have, and now you open up a facility. Like, let me ask you if you agree with this. Theo Von so far has had the best definition of ayahuasca I've heard. He said it gives you the keys to open the doors to the rooms in which you are trapped, and I think it encompasses perfectly. I don't know if you agree.
I've never heard it put more eloquently. That's it. That's it.
Like, when someone asks you about the medicine itself, what do you tell them as far as what it does?
That's a tricky one.
Yeah.
You know, it's evolved over time because, like, I tell people it helps you look at yourself. Like, you have your brain, and your brain is always thinks the same way about your thoughts. And ayahuasca will let you step out of your own thoughts and look at them from a different perspective. And you look at the way you're thinking, and like you're another person in your head, like you're your own counselor, and you go, why are you thinking that way? Like, it's this simple. Just look at what you did. It's okay. This is the solution. This is the way out of that. There you go. And then you're like, so many times I'm like, it's that easy? Holy shit. You know, it's like, it's all so simple. You know, and I'm just amazed that I start laughing. I'm like, I worried about that for years, and that was just this one little solution. Just get out of your ego and just, and then that's all you had to do. It's just, it doesn't matter anymore. You live in the present. None of that isn't you anymore. That is just a story. It's just a long lost dream.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like this vicious cycle that we go through. And to me, ayahuasca kind of breaks down this wall that was surrounding it and lets you step outside of that circle, look back in, but with a totally different perspective. Like, I think about things I've never thought about before. I think about things I used to think were important or not at all. I think about things now that maybe I didn't put as much importance on now that totally I think are important. Like, literally, like, my essence as a man has changed. And in some respects, excuse me, I think it brought me back to almost when I was like a kid, like this innocence before all this callousness started coming and covering everything up. I mean, brother, one of my best friends committed suicide in '05, and I could not make myself cry. And I was looking in the mirror after that, and I'm like, what is wrong with you, man? Are you broken? Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And another time, a few years later, I'm looking in the mirror, and I'm like, who are you, man? Like, I didn't even recognize the guy staring back at me. You know, it sounds so weird to say, but, you know, a lot of guys have these feelings.
Yeah. Yeah, when I had the forgiving, when I forgave myself, I was in this vision of this big thorny ball was in front of me, and I was tearing off pieces of it, and every piece of that was like a scar that had made my personality, or it made me who I was. And, you know, and you put up barriers from the second you're born. Like, you come out of your mom and you're cut from the umbilical cord, and you're like on your own, and you're smacked in the ass, and life is just, it's not, you know, it's just scars. And then you go to grade school and you get picked on, and then you change your personality, and you become a tough man, or you become a weak person, you know, or you have lived with anxiety, or like we did, we just fight through it, and you got to become the man's man that nobody can pick on, you know. That stuff's all, it's all just bred in us from the second we were born. Then I peeled away these thorns, and it was forgiving myself as I kept going. I kept on like, the long story short, when I got to the middle of it, I like ripped it all off, and then my soul was just there, and it was clean. It was all gone. It was just the most magical moment for me. Probably doesn't make much sense of not being in the journey, but it was profound. That was my moment where I was like, I saw the light of my soul. Like I got introduced to my higher self, and I realized this is all just a life to be cherished, and none of the bad matters. It's all about love.
Yeah, it's the truth. But I'll tell you one thing that I guess I wasn't ready for. Number one, I didn't know what I was going to kind of evolve into. It's that when you get this higher consciousness, man, you start talking to your friends, your older friends, and a lot of them looking at you like you have three heads. So, in a lot of respects, you can't even talk to them about this stuff. It's weird. Sometimes you're probably going to shed friends, acquaintances. Like you're up here. Again, not that you're better than anyone else. You're just looking at things from a totally different perspective than you've ever done before. And, I think you find that, a lot of other people who haven't done this are kind of stuck where they were. And I don't know, you're different than them in that respect now.
Yeah, they keep the mask on, the mask of pain that they don't even know they're wearing. And you can see it in them all. Like, not all of them, but you see it in people now, and you're like, I know you're hiding behind that. Just let it go. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, but it's so hard to do. I grew up from a stern father telling me that showing emotion was weakness. And, brother, I was so proud of myself after we drank in March. I did a Facebook Live that Tuesday, 35 minutes, talking about my journey, about the end of my police career, and PTSD. And I was crying. And I never would have been able to feel that emotion, number one, prior to ayahuasca. Never would have cried publicly, ever. And had I done so, I would have been so embarrassed, man. I was so proud of myself. And the next day, I received three calls from good buddies, one of which had a gun in his mouth in a not too distant past I had no idea about. And they were like, brother, you have no idea how much that helped me. And literally, I told my wife after the third one, I'm like, this is it, man. This is my life's pursuit, baby. Like, three guys, and actually a fourth family friend, female, called me as well. She was going through stuff, not as intense as these guys, but you have no idea who's going through what. And, especially family, close friends, people let you see what they want you to see. And if they're not open to letting you see that or don't want you to see that, you're never going to know. But, us as alpha men becoming vulnerable and doing stuff like this allows people, especially men, to realize that it's okay to show emotion, feel emotion. Like, first of all, I don't care what uniform you wear. I went for training with GBR's group, but it's past April after my journey that March. And I was talking to DJ Shipley, former Navy SEAL Team 6 guy. And he's got his Ibogaine healing journey. We got pretty deep about what we had been going through. And I was like, DJ, no matter what uniform we wear, man, we human beings first. And we're supposed to feel. And we callous up so much to protect ourselves from this pain that we feel nothing, bro. And it's not the way life's supposed to be lived, man. I'm like, now I feel, and life is beautiful, and I get up happy. And I'm like, I'm proud of the man I am. He's like, I am too. I'm like, that's what life's about, brother. I'm like, you could still be a warrior, tier 1 warrior, but be able to feel and be able to talk to guys. And, it's just so powerful. I did a podcast a few weeks ago. It's coming out this Sunday. Zach Ferguson, another Navy SEAL. During the course of that podcast, he was crying at one point. I was crying at one point describing our journeys. And we got done, and I was like, brother, that was beautiful. I'm like, someone's going to see a Navy SEAL crying on this, and it's going to change their life. I guarantee it. And just so powerful to me that, we can be shown as vulnerable and, make a difference in someone else's life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's priceless. Like, I try to bring as many veterans or first responders as I can to the medicine, but anyone really. That's why we started the Inekawa with the veterans and the first responders outreach program, the Wounded Guardian program, and we're trying to raise money to so we can get veterans there without them having to pay anything, as long as we can find them or they can hear of us. That there's other groups like there's other groups that do the same thing, that do it well. So
Yeah.
if you guys do know anybody, we can get anybody to the medicine.
Now, if they want to get in touch with you in that respect, where do they go to get that website or Instagram, or how do they get in touch?
Inekawa.org.
Oh, so everything's done through Inekawa. Okay.
Yep, through Inekawa. Yeah, we haven't set up anything outside of it yet, but it's kind of an internal program that we've got going on. So it's maybe you can help me figure out ways to get to people, and this is a good way, But
Absolutely, brother.
Anybody that's out there listening, there are ways if you can't afford it to get you there, because we all care about you and love you.
Absolutely. Anything I could do to help. Obviously, all the links are going to be in the bio to anything to reach you. And literally, this is my life's purpose. So anything I could ever do to help, never hesitate. It's just, I can't, when I talk about it, the words dilute the magic. I've experienced it, people that haven't. How do you explain it? It's inexplicable. Like, there aren't words to describe what you go through.
Yeah, that's the hardest part, because the answer is there, but they don't see it because they don't know. Like, they're not awake to it. They don't see it. Like, and it's right there. We know the answer. If they just listen to us, they could find a way out of the tunnel.
Yeah. Yes. Listen to what we say. Number one. Now, I just have a couple of questions here. My girl Sarah, who's on my marketing team, is into numerology, so she had gotten your date of birth. You are number 9. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but she created some questions as a result of your number being a 9. So, let me see. One great question is... Oh, I like this one, actually. So, balancing a career in dentistry with family life is no small feat. How do you intend to share your experiences, military and post, with your children, particularly about facing adversity and the importance of mental well-being?
Yeah, my daughter's actually going through a crisis right now, and, how do I share with her? They see the change. They know the work that I've done. Like, it's obvious. Like, my kids grew up in an angry household, and and they come to my house for peace, and and I spent last year, I've hired 2 other dentists to work in my private practice. I was alone for 16 years, and so I am going, after I go to the jungle for a month, I'm going to go to 3 days a week, so I have 40 weekends so I can spend with my wife and my kids, and just, it's all about being with the people you love. It's not about making a dollar anymore. Like, I just need enough money to live, and just downsize my world and give them good experiences so they can get over the traumas that I gave them in the past.
Man's got his priorities in order. I love that. All right, one more. So we were just kind of talking about this. Given the stigma around vulnerability in military culture, how have your personal battles with PTSD helped you redefine vulnerability as a strength? And how do you hope to change perceptions for others in similar situations?
Vulnerabilities. Like, I guess, dropping that man's man, like, showing weakness thing. Even when I got blown up, I hit the wall and made this horrible screech, like, ah! And I thought, as I'm getting blown up, as I'm hitting the ceiling, and, that was just a different guy than it is now. Now it's like, yeah, you're going to get blown up, you're going to make a bitch sound,
Yeah.
But
just a little natural, I think.
Yeah, but I was embarrassed. I was like, man, I hope no one heard that, like, before I even hit the floor, I was like, shit. But
is that nuts? 23,000 pound bomb, and you're worried about guys hearing you scream afterwards.
It was pretty bad. It was pretty bad. But was this the question about balancing life or showing the kids?
No. So how do you change perceptions for others in similar situations about vulnerability and that being strengthened?
I show them by being honest and showing them love, and I don't hide anything. I speak the truth, and I tell them I love them, and they think it's weird sometimes. I give hugs, and it's just that guy. I've been this guy in this world that people in a way looked up to, and hopefully still do, but in a different way before. I was the guy
Yep.
that survived the bomb. That was my identity for so long. When I got done with that, I was the guy that walked away. Like poof, a cloud of bomb dust. I'd walk out like a light shining on me. So
Oh, yeah.
I became that guy. And at one point, my daughter was like, every time you meet somebody, you tell, this is like maybe 5 years ago, you tell them that you were blown up. Like 15 years later, it was my identity. Now my identity is a loving father and friend that will help anybody in any way I can, and hopefully that'll be passed on to my children. My son, he has it. He's going to be a good man. He's 16. He's the ear to all his friends. He's really embarked on his spiritual journey already, and he's so grateful that I have that he's been introduced to this in his life, because I remember him telling me just a year ago that he didn't believe in God, and now he's all on. He wants to hear all my stories. He wants to. His mother unfortunately thinks ayahuasca's a cult, so
Really?
he can't go till he's 18. But he's going to join the cult for sure.
Good. I think everyone should join the cult. Brother, if everyone drank ayahuasca, there'd be no war. Life in its entirety would be so different than it is right now. But, you can only bring a horse to water. You can't make him drink, that's for sure.
Yeah, the world is awakening. I feel like the shift is happening. Hopefully it'll happen in our lifetime,
Yeah.
But we're going to be on the front lines helping people awaken to the reality of life and how simple it really is.
Absolutely. And you're doing a fantastic job of that yourself. So, all right, listen. So, in addition to Inekawa.org, any other way that people get in touch with you if they need to, or is it best way right through there?
Right through there. That'd be the best way.
Okay.
My cell phone number.
Be getting a lot of late night 3 a.m.ers, man, with this crowd. So we'll hold off on that for right now, but maybe we'll do a raffle eventually to get Eric's phone on. We'll see what happens.
I'll get it right now.
Charitable donation.
Anytime.
That's great. All right, brother. It was fantastic speaking to you. Hopefully we changed someone's life, and if not, at least we opened up their hearts and minds to things they never thought about before, and that's all we could do. So it was fantastic speaking to you.
I appreciate you. Thanks for having me, and I'm so grateful for being able to help get the word out.
Absolutely. I love you too, brother. Take care, guys. Till next time. Bye-bye. All right, brother. That was awesome. So I didn't hit the record button yet. My team came up with a great idea for 9/11. So I'm going to do a compilation. Everyone I interview, I'm going to ask where they were on 9/11, how their kind of life changed. So from this point on, it's almost like, it's not going to be long here. I'll just ask you that one question, and then they're going to cut that out, and then make an entire compilation of all my interviews on 9/11 to play that. So, all right. So I'm just going to, I'll ask you where you were when you heard, and where you were on that date, and how and if your life changed at that point. All right, Eric. So for 911 special, I spoke to all my interviewees, and just kind of getting a sense of where they were on 9/11, how the day unfolded for them, if their life changed after that point, and if so, how. So on 9/11, please tell us your experience.
That morning, I was studying in the library for a genetics test, and I had my earphones in and earplugs in, and I was studying all morning. I went to a test at 11 o'clock in the morning, or at 10 o'clock in the morning, so it already all happened. I didn't see it. I just walked, studying my book. I walked to the class, took the test for an hour, walked out, and I saw a TV monitor with shit was going on, So
Yeah.
So then I went and I found a secretary, and I was like, I need a phone. So I called my guard unit, and I asked them what's going on. And I was like, what do you need me to do? And they were like, stand down, we'll call you when we need you. So I didn't settle for that. So I just got in a car and I drove from South Georgia to New York City, and then arrived at daybreak the next morning. Drove about 90 miles an hour, never got pulled over. Wasn't worried about it because I was thinking, what if a cop pulls me over? It ain't going to give me a ticket.
Yeah,
We just drove, me and another buddy, we drove up there, and we got into Ground Zero, and and we just helped out. We just looked around, and we ended up seeing Ken Smith came around the corner, Tiny.
Oh, really?
He was just sitting there with guns and with all his guns and everything. We're like, "Can we have a gun? We need a gun," because we didn't know what was going
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
Like, So he was in combat mode, and he gave us a pistol, and then we just handed him over. A couple hours later, we realized it was a low threat environment. And how did it change my life? I don't know. It didn't change my life much. It was just it was a tragic event that I thankfully got to be a part of and help out, and find some DNA of people, so hopefully their families could mourn and have a part of their loved one. But yeah, it was a life altering moment. At the same time, it was just supposed to be.
Yeah. Well, the fact that you jumped in a car and drove from Georgia to New York in a day shows us everything we need to know about you. It's such a noble effort, and it was. I guess we were all trying to figure out what we could do that day, and you hopped in and did exactly what you were trained to do and what you could do, and no one can ask any more of you. So I thank you for making that journey. It was weird. Me and the ex-wife flew down the night before from New York to Georgia. So meanwhile, you're doing a reverse commute the next morning.
Right.
Incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, we could see the smoke from Pennsylvania just rising up when we were coming in. It was insane.
Yeah, we had locked down the airport. I was on the Atlanta Motorcycle Squad, and I remember that next morning we were outside, my partner and I. He was sleeping a little bit. It was about 6 a.m., and the radio came on, and I remember, dude, the solemnness of the guy in the radio, and, I was just, like, brokenhearted. I couldn't believe what had happened, and it was just, eerily, there was no one at the Atlanta airport, which is one of the world's busiest. It was nuts. It was like, zombie apocalypse. There was no one around. It was the weirdest thing. So,
It was one of the biggest tragedies that ever happened to our country. The thing that I think that came out of it the best was everybody was patriotic. Everybody was an American, and everybody was together, and it was so beautiful. Crying to that patriotic music, driving, and just knowing that the country was united. And I just wish we could get there again, but without a tragedy,
Yeah, absolutely. It didn't last long, but while it did, it was beautiful, and unfortunately we had to go through what we went through to see it, but, that part was beautiful. Obviously, the rest of it was just tragedy of epic proportions. But, all right, brother, I want to thank you again for everything, and keep doing what you're doing.
You too, man.
Absolutely.